Hi guys, Amy again from Echo Base. I am here with the lovely, wonderful Brian Herring. Thank you so
Hello.
much for joining us today, and thank you so much for all of your help with Rebelthon. You have been so instrumental. You know literally everyone in the Star Wars galaxy. I feel like. So you've been such a big help in connecting so many people. Vanessa totally gives you a shout out in her interview. So thank you so much for being here and for all of your help. We really
It's my pleasure. I always like to get involved with the Rebel Legion and all of you guys, 501st and all the droid builders and everything. It's brilliant to meet a fandom that's that passionate, and also this is for a great cause as well. So I'm really glad that you can do something when we're not being able to come to conventions. It's nice that people can get involved and do something like that. So that's very cool.
Yeah. So I want to start at the beginning. I know that you are a huge Star Wars fan, and we'll get to that in a second. But out of curiosity, what influenced you to go into puppetry and kind of really look into that art?
I'm afraid it's not anywhere near as much of a spiritual tale as you'd want it to. I lied at an audition for a TV show in 1992, and 6 weeks later, I was on television as a puppeteer.
That's fantastic.
I was working as I was an actor from about 1989, and I had been working as an actor and a stand-up, and I've been kind of creeping around doing backstage stuff as well. And then I met somebody whose son worked on a TV show in the UK called Spitting Image, which was a political satire show through the 80s and 90s. And I wound up at what I thought was a workshop, turned out to be an audition. They were hiring apprentice puppeteers, assistants. And so they took me on, they trained me up, and I wound up doing it. And that's what I've been doing ever since. I mean, I still occasionally creep into acting if I absolutely have to, but I've been playing with puppets ever since. So that's since 1992. So I've been sort of at it a while now.
And what's great is I feel like you've done everything in terms of puppetry. You've done the rod puppets, you've done now creature performance with Star Wars, and of course the droid work with BB-8, which is
I mean, I've covered a fair amount of sort of ground. I've done a lot of sort of hand-up Muppet style stuff with Henson's and a few other places. I've done some Bunraku. I've done motion capture and performance capture. I wouldn't say I've mastered any of those things, because there are people that go and train and just do years and years and years, and they're really, really. And the BB-8 is, because he's every different tool in the box. He's animatronic. He's remote control. There's the hand puppet version, and of course the digital versions as well. So he covers a lot of different ground, and there's a lot of different guys that work on BB-8. So there's a whole team of us that bring him to life.
It's so interesting. So I'm going to take a step back. You've been a Star Wars fan since the absolute beginning.
Yep.
What was your first experience, and what was your favorite Star Wars toy growing
up? My dad took my brother and myself to see it in what I would probably be the Christmas of 77 or early 78. I can't remember. And I do know I slept for the last 10 minutes because I was 7 years old. But it blew my mind. So it would just, I always wanted to kind of go into the theatre, but Star Wars was just a big, huge thing for me. And I thought, I'd like to be able to do that. I'd like to go and make films. And then it wasn't too much later I found out that was something people could do as a job. But I remember getting my first Star Wars figures, and I got Chewbacca and Darth Vader. They were the first two I had, and I still have them. I still have all my Star Wars toys from the 70s. And from there, I just kind of went crazy for it. I remember my grandfather buying me the cardboard Palitoy Death Star when that came out. And again, something I still have, as I said, I still have it all. And it just, I think it was built until I was about, sat in my room for years and years. I mean, I was well into my teens before I finally packed it. And I was that kid that wouldn't let their parents throw the boxes away. So all the boxes sat in my parents' loft, and all the toys just went back in them. And then later on, those boxes were then cleaned up and bubble wrapped, and have since been stored, sealed and sealed up, and they're still around. I've still got all of it. But yeah, it was such a big deal for me.
What was it like as a fan? I mean, you just listed your first two figures as Chewbacca and
Hmm.
Peter, and I mean, you've done movies with these characters.
Yeah, yeah.
What was it like to be on the Falcon, to meet Chewbacca, to see Darth Vader in a movie that you worked on?
Yeah, well, it was pretty cool. Is not it doesn't cover it. You know, the term "living the dream" is a very overused term. But I remember saying to Dave Chapman, who's my co-puppeteer with BB-8, that if I wake up and this has been about 6 weeks into the shoot, I said if I wake up and this has been a dream, I am going to be angry for months. And we got to go. I started on The Force Awakens, I think in July of 2013. I was on the film for 16 months because Neil Scanlon hired me as a puppeteer coordinator, a puppeteer consultant. So I went in very, very early. I think when I joined the Creature Shop, there were 7 of us. And by the time the movie had gone through production, there had been 122 people, I think, in that one department. And so I was there for a lot of the R&D and a lot of the early stages. And when Dave Chapman came and joined us when BB-8 was all kind of cast and we were starting to really rehearsals, we went on to M stage and we got onto the Falcon before the film crew had got on. So when we went on it, the props department, the art department had just finished dressing it, and we went up the ramp. And it's a set that will make grown men cry. You know, ask Kevin Smith. You
Yeah.
know, so we went up the ramp. You go, you go up there, you turn right, you go past the gun ladders, and you look down the corridor to the cockpit. And we walked into the living area,
Hmm.
and there's the chess table, and there were 3 guys who just dressed it, and they're just sitting on the floor, and they just finished their job. And and once a film crew moves into a film set, they just destroy it because it's full of equipment, and they take walls out, and it's never the same again.
Yeah.
But we walked into it, and it was just there, and these 3 guys were sitting on the step, and we just kind of were composing ourselves, and we went, "Did you do this?" And they went, "Yeah." We went, "It's great." And we got really, and you suddenly become 9 years old, and then you run out of there and you run up the corridor and you sit in the cockpit and you push the and then you're not really supposed to be on there in the first place, because if everybody did that, they destroyed the set. But it is an amazing thing. And when people would just come and do like dailies on the film, or they do a couple of days and they weren't shooting on the Falcon, we try and get them onto the set, just to say, so that even if we were shooting like Maz's Castle or something else like that, we go, come down to M stage, we've got to show you this. And we wouldn't tell them what they were going on to, and they wouldn't really twig it until they hit the bottom of the ramp, because the outside doesn't bear any relationship to the inside, and of course the outside of the set doesn't look like the Millennium Falcon. The only recognizable bit is that ramp. And the cockpit as well. So if you come in from the wrong side, you just immediately see the cockpit and the ramp, and you go, "Oh, I know what this is." But if you come in from the approach from the back, go take them around the back way and up the thing. It just and people just lose their minds. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's so great. I mean, I've seen and I've been to Disney World and Disneyland since they built the Falcon there, and just
Mm-hmm.
in a
Yeah.
site like that, I can't imagine to actually be on the set and just have that experience is
Well, one of
so
the
cool.
really most fun parts for me, one of my fondest memories, is we went down to Greenham Common where they shot the Rebel base, and in the first movie. So I used to get to work very, very early because I just hate traffic. So it was an outdoor set, and I was on, and I just thought, oh, before breakfast, I'll just go and have a quick look at the set. So I went around the corner, and there were 6 X-wings in a row. They're just facing. So it's 2 rows of 3 X-wings. And then through the mist, you could just see the Millennium Falcon. And there was nobody there. And it was a thing of beauty. And I ran down the middle of the set. And of course, once you hit the middle of the X-wings, you realize that the second 2 are made of wood. They're flat.
No.
Yep. And then you get to the ramp of the Falcon, and I ran up the ramp of the Falcon and just got to the scaffolding in the middle, because they only built half of it. There's nothing on the inside. So it does ruin the illusion. But the shot, just the memory of looking down the middle runway of the place and seeing those ships and all that equipment, the kind of crazy Rebel generators and all the stuff that the art department build that do nothing but look like they're completely functional. And to see half of the Falcon there was just stunning. And then, of course, they built the whole Falcon for The Last Jedi. And that was great as well, because that was in an outdoor set and you could walk right around it and go up into the thing. It's, very cool.
How much of this project did you know going into it? Did you know it was Star Wars? Because we've talked to some of the other puppeteers. I keep referencing Nick just because.
Yeah, because you just spoke to Nick. Yeah, well, I knew because I got the gig from Neil Scanlon directly, because I had phoned Nick actually looking for Maria Cork's phone number. Sorry, I'd phoned Neil looking for Maria Cork's phone number for something else I was working on. And I was kind of complaining about the lack of work that was around at the time. And then because I knew Star Wars was coming in, and I said to Neil, now I have to find out who's got the Star Wars gig and kick his door in. And Neil said, well, don't do that. I like the door where it is. And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize it was you, Neil. I'm really sorry. He said, don't worry, I'll find you something. And then he called me back about 20 minutes later and he asked me a couple of questions. And he clearly liked my answers. And he said, well, will you come and will you come and run the puppeteers for this? Will you find me the puppeteers and the guys? Can you put a list together of a bunch of people? So that was my job, was to kind of find performers. And so I got to go back through people I'd worked with. I'd worked for Paul Casey on 28 Weeks Later. And Paul had to leave to go off to do Torchwood because the film ran over slightly. And he asked me to come in and take over from him as the movement coordinator, coordinator on 28 Weeks Later, which I did I did about 2 or 3 days. So I just covered Paul at the end. And so I remembered Paul. And so I kind of dipped into Paul's brain. And when I was saying I need some people, I was on the phone to him and he went, oh, what is it? I said, oh, it's a kind of a commercial and it's sort of a space pub. So I want people that can wear alien heads and do that sort of thing. And then I came back to him a couple of days later. I said, I need some more people. And he went, this isn't a commercial, is it? And I went, no.
No.
And he said, is this what I think it is? And I went, it might be. But because I couldn't tell anybody, and you couldn't tell anybody what it was. Yeah. You couldn't actually say those 2 4-letter words next to each other because it was so secret. So then I just had to go along and find just people, I had to get in touch with legacy people. So I had to contact Mike Quinn and Tim Rose. And then I was just bringing in people with different skill sets to put together a big list of people that then became our core puppetry and performance group.
Right before The Force Awakens opened in New York, they had BB-8 come in the big wooden box and set up this red carpet and just wanted him to roll down. The poor thing was just not rolling down the red carpet.
Oh, bless it. I mean, that is an amazing piece of kit. I mean, there's a bunch of us that are involved with BB-8, and there's 2 guys, Matt Denton and Josh Lee, and also Giles Hennigan. I could keep expanding this team because there's so many people at it. But while we were making the first movie, we had 7 versions of BB-8. 7 versions. We had the Wiggler, which is an animatronic one, which just sits on a plate and it doesn't roll, but it moves. The head and the body move 359 degrees either way, and it kind of, you can rocking backwards and forwards and turn the head. And I have control of the head and the body on that, and Dave works with me on everything on all of these. And so Dave runs the lights for that, and I'll do the head and the body. Then there's a puppet version, which is a rod version. So have you ever seen me running around the green suit?
Which I love.
Yeah, I've got gross body movement on that, and I've also got the head forwards and backwards and over this way and this way. And Dave has got left and right on the head, so we work together there. And so if you want to make it look up and to the left, I have to pitch it back, roll it over, and Dave has to turn it. And if he misses, it looks drunk, and he's got a really tough job because he's normally way away from me. So, and he also corrects my eye lines because I've not got direct line of sight because I'm behind it. So Dave will, sneak it, just cheat it sometimes if I've missed my marks. Then there are trike versions which have got wheels on the back, and that's done with. So Dave will do the head. He's got the full head on that, and Matt Denton drives them because he's better at it than I am. So he designed the drive system, and he does a lot of he does all the animatronics programming, and so he's very smart. So he knows how that one works, and he gets on and does that. And I'll do dialogue for all of them. So when they're talking to BB-8, I'm giving vocal responses to give them something to react to. So she'll say, where did you come from? And I'll go, and she'll go, classified. And then the guys at ILM or Skywalker Sound, Matthew Wood and his lads, will take that out, and they created the electronic language, and they'll put that over the top. And while we were filming the movie, we had all these different versions of the droid.
Yeah.
And Matt and Josh were going, Josh Lee was definitely going, I think we can make this work. And then he was designing one that would just work as the red carpet one that you saw come out at Celebration. And then that you saw in the flesh at Good Morning America. Yeah. And Dave and I had never seen that. The first time we saw that, we were in South Africa doing a commercial, and we were watching the live stream, and out comes this droid, and we're like, they've done it. And about 10 minutes later, I get a text from Josh Lee that just said, "Don't worry, lads, it can't do what you do." And it was such a sweet thing to do because they just had this major unveiling.
Yeah.
And Dave and I are like, "We're out of a job, Dave." And because it's a brilliant thing. I mean, because it goes to all, no one wants to see me in a green suit pushing this thing up the red carpet, but we
It's
still
so
use.
great. Your Lego figure of that is
It's
fantastic.
fun, isn't it? It's really good. A guy made that for me. It's absolutely brilliant. So BB-8 is every tool in the box, and it's a massive team effort. So all these guys get involved and bring their own stuff to it, and so he's a big he's a big team effort, and it's lots of different techniques, and that's what I kind of like about it is you can't tell the difference.
How much of a say did you have in the personality, or how much of a
Right.
background did you have on
Okay.
the character
Yep.
leading in?
So Dave and I got 2 weeks to go and find what it did, what it didn't do. So you look at when so like there's stuff where you just go, we're going to use the puppet version of this because the trike doesn't like the terrain, or we use the wiggler for this because you can get certain types of movement out of it, or they don't want to paint anybody out. So you just put the wiggler down, you cover the base in sand, you walk away from it. But if that then has to leave shot, you have to cut and do something else with it. So we've done a bunch of tests, and then we did a demonstration for JJ and Kathleen, and that was a hugely stressful day because it could have gone digital like that. And JJ had left Neil and the team to kind of get on with it. He never really hassled him about it because he
Wow.
just trusted Neil
Yeah.
to be able to marshal the guys through this. And the day we demoed it, I remember I was doing the puppet version, and JJ, what we'd done is we found we found an entire vocabulary of movement for it. So we worked out how he boots up, how he shuts down. We tried him going downstairs, and they said you'll never have to go downstairs. And then of course we go downstairs. But so we demoed these droids, and JJ said to me, "I love this. I love the way you're puppeteering it. Go read the scripture in the movie." And that was the point that we actually were given BB-8 to perform. And so Dave and I went along, and we sat in a room, and they took our mobile phones away from us, and they gave us these 2 black books with red pages, and we sat in a room with somebody at the end of the table, and we opened the book, and it said Star Wars Episode 7, written by J.J. Abrams, Michael Arndt, and Lawrence Kasdan, and that in itself was exciting. And then we turned the next page, and it just said Starfield, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And then you read the opening crawl. And then we read it in 2 sittings. But the more we read it, we suddenly realized that this thing wasn't just in this movie, it was in the whole movie.
Yeah.
And then the fear set in. Because we suddenly realized that we were now going to do something that everybody was going to see.
Yeah.
And everybody was going to have an opinion on it. And as Star Wars fans, we felt duty bound to have something that could sit next to Yoda and R2 and Chewbacca and be from the same galaxy and the same story. Whereas maybe you look at some of the characters that perhaps were in the prequels, and you line them up and they don't necessarily look like they're from the same universe, even though the designs were all beautiful. But I think just because these BB-8 was a real thing that was there on the day. You can take a photograph of it and just go, that's what you can stand it next to R2D2, and you can knock him into him. And so we had a real responsibility, we felt, to make something that the fans were going to like. And I think it worked out. So because Dave and I work together as well to talk about the personality, our timing is very similar. So Dave will take my physical cues, and he'll know when I'm going to go, and we'll have quick confabs. We don't get very much rehearsal on set, so we have to come in knowing what we're doing.
Yeah.
So, and also we're the one they shoot last, because a lot of the time we make our film with the second unit because they're filming everybody from the waist up, so they don't need BB-8 there.
Yeah.
There'll sometimes be one on the floor for them to reference, or we'll have a remote control one. But if he's not on camera and the animatronics ones are on, they don't want you to be moving him because it messes the sound up.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time they then go back with a second unit, or they'll come in late, or they'll come in at the end of that. So they'll shoot Daisy and they'll shoot Harrison or whoever, and then BB-8's down the bottom. So then they'll punch him very quickly, or they'll stick another camera on it. I mean, there was one instance with that where when they first get onto Han's freighter in The Force Awakens, and there's a shot so you've got we did the rehearsals, and they did a whole camera rehearsal with it, and there was the first. They did a first take on it, and it was Han, Ray, I think BB-8, Finn, and Chewie walking along, and they panned across them, and the shot was of Harrison Ford Daisy Ridley, idiot in a green suit, John Boyega, and Jonas. So you just like, so I get told to get out. So they just take BB-8 out, and then they'll do another shot, a low shot on a dolly with BB-8. So we don't get a lot of rehearsal. We don't get to do the scene over and over and over again. We just have to come in. I mean, it's not like we have lines to remember. I mean, we do have marks to hit, and we do have angles and places we have to hit, do our action, but it's a little easier for us. But equally, we have a whole different set of challenges. But so we just have to know what we're doing when we go in. So Dave and I learnt the character, and the same with Matt with the remote controls as well. We have to try and make them all match up.
Yeah.
So we learnt the personality of the character, and then that all gets replicated, by the CG team and by the red carpet ones. And so we did get to have a bit of a an influence on its personality.
Yeah.
And it's because it's really it's Dave and I's timing. So that's we kind of say we share a comedy brain, so it works pretty easily. Sort of a little bit of trivia. Some people will know this, some people don't. Is that, do you know what BB-8's first line in The Last Jedi is?
Isn't I have a bad feeling about this?
It is I have a bad feeling about this, yeah. So it was I was quite pleased to be the character that was quite pleased.
Did you guys know that? Or was that
yes.
true when you found out ahead?
Yes, I did know that, yeah. Yes.
It's like you guys were the character that got to say that iconic.
I say that because everyone said to Ryan, "Oh, you didn't put the line in it's lines and everything," but it was in there.
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so great. Did you guys realize, or could you have foreseen the reception that BB-8 would get from the fans?
We didn't know, actually. We thought it was going to be okay because the crew liked it. And the crews at Pinewood, the British film crews, if they don't like what you're doing, that they don't like what you're doing. And our guys have done Batman, Bourne, and Bond. So if it begins with a B, they'll do it. And if it begins with a C, they can't do it. But so they've done all those big movies, and they were like, "Yeah, what you got there then? We like your little robot, Brian. It makes us laugh." So when the trailer dropped and you saw BB-8 booking through the desert, for about 12 hours, we thought, "Oh dear," because as we know, the internet is a really forgiving and generous place, and they very rarely tell you their opinion. So, there was the whole, Disney have made a CG toy movie. And then luckily Mark got on Twitter and said, that thing's real, right? And then suddenly that Ralph McQuarrie design of R2 with a ball at the bottom showed up, and people went, "Oh, okay. Oh, well, maybe we might like this then." And then the film came out, and I didn't quite anticipate how popular it was going to be. I was doing a film in Mumbai in India, and there was BB-8 in a shop window. I just think this thing is just so big, and so it was fun to see him kind of become popular. And of course, everyone's like, "Oh, that shot of BB-8 running through the desert, that's CGI. That's CGI. You can't do that practically." And of course, that shot was practical.
Yeah,
that was Dave lashed to the back of the camera car and me running like crazy through the desert in ridiculous heat, and
in your green suit.
in my beautiful green nylon onesie, and it's one of my favorite parts of the movie because it was going to be done as a reference shot, and then JJ went, "How fast can you run?" And I'd been working out, and because when I was doing the R&D, Josh Lee, BB-8's dad, as I like to call him, that the BB-8 is coated with a new kind of vinyl that wasn't particularly well used at the time, and they built a mock-up of the ball on the rod, and Josh said, "Run that around the back lot and see if you can dent it." So I was crashing it into things just to see if it would split, or if you could rub the dirt down. And I ran around the back lot once and just was in terrible shape. And I was a man of a certain age that had never seen the inside of a gymnasium. And I thought, I really have to go and get in shape for this, because I don't want to be someone who almost did a Star Wars movie and have some young puppeteer on the making of going, "Oh yeah, there was an old guy, he died in the desert." And so I went off and got a personal trainer for 3 days a week. I had 3 sessions a week, just did a load of cardio. And I knew I was going to be running in desert, and running on sand is no fun. Anyone that's in the military will tell you that. But I was, there was someone would bring me an umbrella and give me some water after my little stint of running. But it was a fairly tough gig. The guys who were, say, Matt and Josh, who were the sort of out with it as a pit crew as well, if you will, they had trouble in the heat. They, the glue would melt that was keeping the panels on, so that would lift, and they had to hoover out the sand every day. So there were all kinds of all kinds of trouble. But it worked out okay.
Do you see a shift in puppetry because of things like Star Wars, where they're bringing in these real puppets? It's not really CGI anymore, and these real creatures. And then even you have Netflix bringing back, the Dark Crystal.
Yep. Yeah.
There's
I
a
mean,
nostalgic factor, which is
yeah,
really nice to see all of
it
this
is.
now.
It's great to see. It's also brilliant to be able to do. I mean, it's JJ decided he wanted to make a sequel to Return of the Jedi, like it was 1985. So that involved guys in rubber suits and puppets and that kind of thing. So he really wanted it to have a tactile quality. The same aesthetic that George Lucas's original movies had. And of course, now you've got ILM, who are just cutting edge out the front on all of that stuff. So there's been a real combination and a very healthy marriage between CG and animatronics. So now, if you look at something like Babu Frick, there were 1, 2, 3, 4 people directly behind Babu Frick, and 3 extra puppeteers on the outside of it. And they are the rods on Babu Frick are about that long, so they're the people directly behind it on the little table puppeteering him, and they've just been removed afterwards. And I've been cleaned out of so much of the BB-8 stuff. And so there's CG involved in everything, even if it's not with the performance, it's with the clean out and the occasional touch up. Sometimes they'll go in and fix the mouth.
Yep.
If they'll change dialogue. So they'll have to go in and fix that. Or you get something that goes maybe from completely CGI with Maz Kanata, that then will go animatronic with CG, some CG assists. So it's that thing that it's that case of finding what the best tool for the job is now. And if you look at something like Jurassic World 2, I think there were more practical dinosaurs on Jurassic World 2 than there were in the previous 2 put together. So they've same team, same guys with Neil Scanlon's guys again, and there were so many practical dinosaurs, and you can tell the difference. I mean, the CG is amazing, but the actors react differently. When you've got something that will knock you over if it hits you, you're more inclined to get out of its way. And you can't really replicate when someone has to put their hand on something. It's so difficult to do with there nothing being there, or just a green blob. If you actually have something that, if you touch it, when we did the Fathia scenes with Kelly Marie Tran, she never quite knew what that Fathia was going to do. And we made sure she never quite knew what that thing was going to do, because she was stroking a big horse, and sometimes horses will move or whatever. So I was at the back of that I had a very large 3-bar rig which ran. So I had control of the head up and down, left and right, and I could turn it this way. And then Dave and Chris Clark, who was the animatronic engineer who built all of the internals for it, he was on the mouth, Dave was on the eyes. I think Dave did the eyes and the ears and Chris did the mouth, and I was gross head movement and neck movement. And so the ones you see come over in the stables all looking out, that was one practical Fathia. So we locked the camera off. We did that 6 times or 5 times, however many times it was, I can't remember. And then ILM went in and just recolored them and gave them different scars and touched them up slightly. And then every time it ran, it was, if you saw a full length of its legs, then that was a CG version. We also had a running rig that they rode on, and we spent 3 days with John and Kelly riding this rig, and it had a full head that went up and down and ears that went, and that was a pretty crazy time. But so Kelly occasionally wouldn't quite know how it would react, and so a lot of the stuff you see with her, she just loved it as well. So you see the joy on her face is you see her almost interacting with something that she perceives to be a real, we're trying to make it like it's a real character for her. So and because you can get that kind of performance in the moment, it works really nicely. So if sometimes when you go to touch an animal and it flinches, you don't quite know. So we would get some of that going on. We did a lot of stuff like that.
Oh, that's so I love all of that. And you're mentioning you've worked on so many different creatures. You've also had a creature named after you.
Yes, here and Beering in Solo.
Solo,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
What are some of the other favorite creatures of yours? If Is there one thing that you've learned on the set of Star Wars that you hadn't worked on before that became a new skill?
I've done more rod puppetry on this than I think I have anything else. The Porgs were a very interesting challenge. We had a puppetry team of 4 core guys, and then a couple of other people would join us. So each Porg was about this big, and there were 2 of us per Porg. And the rods would come out of the back. So there would be a rod on the head and a rod on the body, and various mechanisms you could use. I could open them, close the mouth on the head, and move the head was in kind of a ball socket. So as I moved out, the head would move around. And then I had some kind of trigger that would make the body pop up and down. So you could make it hop. And then the legs would collapse into the body. So you could actually, and they were kind of sprung. So you could push the body up and down on the legs. And if you lifted them up, the feet drop down. So you could pick the whole thing up and it would do this crazy thing. And then I worked with Dave a lot. So Dave was then on wings. So he was we were both crouched over, and then Dave would be working around me with 2 rods making the wings work, and we would communicate I would communicate in a little weird bird song. So we would chirrup, and it would do this kind of little thing, and we'd make noises like, which would meant it was flapping its wings. It would raise up and flap its wings. And Damien Farrell and Colin Purvis were the other sort of core team, and they worked together quite a bit. And then we had people like Neil Sterenberg would join us, and Sam Nicholson, who mech'd the whole thing. He would occasionally join us if we needed an extra set of hands, because he knew how everything worked. So that the sad Porg, the one that's looking at Chewie when he's eating his cousin, that took 5 of us to do it. So there was the lip was animatronic, the eyes would move slightly. There was 2 guys doing the body, and then there was something else that Sam was involved in. So there were 5 of us doing that one shot. That's a practical shot, and there was just 5 of us on that one puppet. So that's been quite an interesting thing, and you've learned. I did some head work in this, some skin work. So you learn to work with people who, I'm sure Nick discussed this as well when he's talking about how someone is in your ear directing you all the time. So I've been on both ends of that. So I've guided people and been guided, and that's quite nice. And you make a lot of really nice friends, and you've met people who have got skills that you never thought they had, and you people whose tolerance for being in heads for a long time. People like Derek Arnold and Tom Wilton and those guys. Paul Casey's a monster for it. He'll stay in for hours. He makes us all look bad, So
A fascinating person to talk to, and
he's great. Yeah,
he keeps saying I have to write a book, and we're like, please write a book. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to be able to get sort of, because Paul employed me on 28 Weeks Later, and it was just nice to be able to go, hey, Paul, do you want a job? It's a good job. And so it was nice to sort of bring a load of the people that I've been working with for 20 odd years in on this, and then just go, look what we're doing. And there were a lot of people who were very, very excited. I mean, it just gets said on the internet, and sometimes not in the most flattering way, but I maintain that The Force Awakens was the most expensive fan film ever made, because everybody who made it was a fan, and fan film is not a derogatory comment, it's everybody was completely into it, and everybody was massive fans.
It's so good, and it shows, honestly. You can definitely tell the passion, and even hearing everyone talk in interviews about making that movie, and you talk about the conditions of being in the desert, but it does have that, as I keep saying, nostalgic factor. It was so great to see that all brought back to life again by those who love it and really want to take that and do justice for this series.
That was it. The other fun thing about that was I didn't get to work on the Phantom Menace, and there was talk at one point, because I was around at that time and I knew people who worked on it, and there was like, oh, we'll try and get you on. Didn't get on it, but I got to come in and do the Star Wars I remembered. So I got to meet Harrison and work with Carrie, and meet Mark, and I'd become quite good friends with Anthony Daniels, and that was a huge amount of fun. So I got to go on the Falcon, which Ewan McGregor never got to do. So it was a nice thing to come into those and to do it in the Star Wars environment that I was very familiar with. And because it was such a practically made movie, we had considerably more sets than they would have had, although they had lots of sets for the prequels, but we actually had, really a lot of stuff. And so everything was built, which is crazy
Yeah.
fun.
So you've done Star Wars. I love that you've
Yes.
also puppeteered the Voldemort puppet over at the Olympics.
Yes, that was a lot of fun.
Um,
Yeah, that was good. That's
and,
where I met Derek Arnold, who you may be speaking to
oh,
this weekend. So
yeah.
Derek and I worked together on the Olympics, and I thought, oh, you're fun. I think I'll keep you around. And so after several attempts to get Derek involved on Star Wars, he eventually, because Derek came in and read for a set of auditions at one point as an actor for us, reading against
Wow.
puppeteers, and then I, he'll tell you the whole story. So yeah, so I met Derek on the Olympics, which was great, and that was a crazy job to be involved in as well. That was
Oh, I bet. I mean,
huge.
just looking at that puppet is just incredible.
Yeah, but the sheer scale of that entire show, there was 7,000 people or something like that in that show, and it was just absolutely crazy to
Yeah.
be involved in something that the world watched. And this was, for me, it was pre Star Wars, but also because it was live and it was over like that. I lived about 4 tube stations from the ceremony, from the stadium. So I'd done the show, got the makeup off, handed the costume back, had a pint, and then got home before Paraguay brought the flag out. So that was just, what are you watching? We're watching the show. Great. We could hear the fireworks from my place, which was fun. So that was a pretty cool job to do.
Yeah. And also, according to IMDb, you worked on Muppets Treasure Island.
I did. There were when the Muppets come to town, everybody works on the Muppet movies because they need 1,000 frogs. So that was the first big movie I did. I don't think I did enough days to get. I didn't get credit. I think I did like about a week. So I went off. I got a TV show, and I left that to go and do a character in a TV show. And then when I came back, they were still at it. I did tiny bits. I was on the ship at one point, and I did. What else did I was in the treasure room when they find all that. I did a few bits and pieces on it. I got to do Prometheus as well, which was fun.
Oh, yeah. I remember hearing that in an interview that you'd worked on Prometheus.
Yeah.
Is that where you met Neil?
I met Neil on another job, and then he called me up about Prometheus off the back of that job. So myself and Dave again, we brought Dave on. I called Dave up for that one and just said, you kind of want to return my call on this day because I think you'll have a laugh for doing this. Do you want to come and work on the new Alien film? It's like, yeah. So that was myself and Dave and Phil Woodfine, who does a lot of stuff with Neil and has done all the Star Wars movies, and a couple of other people. We did the worms that they find. When you find a 3-foot alien white worm, you should give it a poke because that's not going to end
Of
badly.
course. I mean, that's
So
what I
we
do.
Yeah, so we did those, and there was a team that did the thing that came out of her stomach. There was some CG versions of that, and again, Matt Denton and Josh and all those guys were Neil's crew. They all worked on. There was a big crossover between Prometheus and Star Wars, and then there were a couple of other little bits and pieces the guys worked on. So Prometheus was huge fun because I never thought we were going to be able to do a Star Wars movie. Thought that's done and finished. So I got to do an Alien one. That's okay. That's kind of cool. So I got to do that. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy I did as well. And I did Hellboy 2 with Guillermo del Toro and Doug Jones and all those guys. That was vast amounts of fun as well.
What is one thing you would like to do that you've not done yet?
Oh, that's a very good question. I don't know, if
You've
I'm
done
honest.
so much, and so many
I kind
iconic.
of, when I first started puppets, I thought, well, I think there's 3 things I'd like to do. I'd like to have a show which I write and have my own character in. And I did that for the BBC. It was a thing called the Animal Magic Show. And then I thought I'd like to work with the Muppets or work for Henson's. And I did that fairly fast because Muppets Treasure Island was in town. And so that was one of the first gigs I did after Spitting Image, or during Spitting Image. And then I worked for Henson's for about 10 years after that, on and off in the UK. And then I thought I'd like to do a Star Wars film. And I've done it all. I've done everything that I thought I would, everything I set out to do with puppets, I've done now. So I don't really know what else. I'm sure something will come along. I'd love to get involved in the writing of some of these TV shows with Star Wars. I'd like to kind of continue within Star Wars because I like Star Wars and I kind of know my Star Wars. So I'd like to be able to tell some stories with those guys. But the level they're working on and the pressure, I'm not sure that I could stand it, to be honest, because those guys are under an awful lot of pressure to get this right.
But I love with the Mandalorian, they're bringing in, the child.
Yep. And
Which
there's a whole the LA
is
team of
beautiful.
puppeteers that are up at
Yeah.
that. Those guys over at I think it's Legacy Effects, isn't it? So they're
Yes.
doing that. I mean, it's quite fun to see a lot of the stuff that was either used in the previous 5 movies we'd made,
Yep.
or maybe have never kind of got its moment in the sun in those movies show up in The Mandalorian. There's lots of stuff you go, that's
Really?
yeah. There's loads of stuff, loads and loads of stuff from those movies from the Disney era movies, the Star Wars stories and the sequel trilogy that has arrived. I mean, the Rio puppet is in The Mandalorian, because there were several versions that Rio was being achieved in Solo, and the puppet version of Rio appears in The Mandalorian when they're on the prison ship. When they're on the prison ship rescuing the Twi'lek guys, you see 4 little hands, and you just see his head come up and go back down again, and that was the Rio, the original Rio puppet.
Oh my god. Oh, I love how they're bringing that back.
Mm. So they're I don't think it's supposed to be Rio, but it's just the
But
same, it's the same species.
yeah.
So yeah, we see quite a lot of the stuff that was in various ones, movies where it was in the background at Canto Bight, or
That's really cool.
so they're repurposing stuff, maybe repainting it slightly, and up it turns.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I feel like I think, well, the last thing I did want to note is I do love the fact that even though you were in quarantine and puppets, you know, those who are working puppets all over the world are in quarantine.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You just posted the, oh my goodness, what did you guys call it? The
Lockdown puppets.
Yes, I love
Yeah.
that video.
Yeah, that's been we finally got that out yesterday. Hashtag lockdown puppet should be able to find that. And what that was, I was seeing people do videos, various sort of things, and I just thought, well, let's just do something that's going to give people a laugh. And so I called a bunch of the guys and said, well, here's a track, can you just do something to that? And then I said, don't worry, I'll edit it. And then I realized these things just started coming at me from all over the place. So my friend Steve Kinman and Steve helped me out. He knows his way around a lot of the Final Cut Pro, and I did most of it, and then Steve really kind of got into the nitty gritty for me. And that dropped yesterday. So we're kind of trying to get people, if they've got kids at home, pull the sofa out and make some sock puppets. Just get kids to make a show. It's not anywhere near as difficult as you think. And if they want to post them online, hashtag lockdown puppets. And it's just a thing that might keep people happy for a couple of hours, because we're all stuck in, and it's just something that might be a bit of fun.
Yeah, because I mean, in America, they've been talking about how, for example, like the Sesame Street puppets,
Yes.
really those are being mailed to the Muppeteer,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
actually able to do videos at home,
Mm-hmm.
which is comforting to everyone.
Yeah, exactly. And Apple have just done a Fraggle Rock series like that they're coming out every week. So there's all
Yeah.
the Fraggles are a little bit of the screen, and they're talking to each other on, I think they're called doozer tubes or something, and they're talking in these little shells the doozers have dropped off. So that's quite cute. I've only seen the first one, but it's very sweet.
Yeah,
So,
and
it's just things to keep people interested, really.
yeah, and I just love that because I actually became really interested in puppetry when Avenue Q came out in New York.
Okay. Yep.
And Rick Lyon, who designed those puppets,
Yeah. Yep.
I talked to him, and then John Tartaglia, who's in the show, who's done a ton of Henson, started on.
Yeah. He's doing Fraggle Rock. I think he's playing.
He does Gobo, which I absolutely
Gobo,
love, and he used to teach puppetry classes in New York.
Yes.
And I've taken a class or two of his, and it's just it is such a fascinating world, and just the little nuances that you don't even think about because everything is so seamless on camera, is just incredible. And just what you've done with these movies and what you guys do on a daily basis to bring these characters to life is just absolutely incredible. It really is.
That's very kind. I mean, we do have the best time, and there is a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but also something that should be. It's very important to note. You've had Maria here, and there are an army of people, from the guys like Jake Lunt and Martin Rosard and the creature designers who, did Ivan Manzella and Luke Fisher and Christian Altsman and people like that, who just start drawing. And then from there, it goes through a sculpting phase, or it gets put together in CAD, or however it gets made. And then the fabricators get involved and the mechanics get involved. And so there's been at least 20 people before we get to touch it. And I get to come and do these things because I'm the idiot in the green suit that you see on the camera, you see on the making of stuff. And I happen to go up in the cast list. So it was like, oh yeah, you play BB-8, but actually I play BB-8 with a whole bunch of other people. And so there's a whole army of guys who are, they're trained engineers, or they're software engineers, or they're fine artists, or with Maria, she works with hair.
Her
So you,
stories are so
yeah.
interesting. She was talking about like the mud pits with Chewie and
Oh,
oh,
they shot that first as
so
well. I couldn't work. I couldn't understand why they shot it first. But yeah, and also, people don't realize that the Porg puppets. I mean, there's a big gap between. There's I have an email. I can read it to you. No, there's a very big marriage between the Porgs with the CG and with the practical Porgs, and there's
yeah,
often CG takeovers. But each feather in that Porg has been put in by hand. And the work is so intricate. So when we start rehearsing, like, don't rehearse with the real ones. It's like, well, we need to rehearse with them. So we'll rehearse with them in plastic. They'll be wrapped up in bags, just to keep the integrity of the work that they've done, so that it looks
yeah.
beautiful on camera.
It's incredible.
So it's an incredible, a massive team of people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I loved even hearing the stories of like Kelly Marie Tran going to like help feather the Porgs.
Yeah. Yeah.
I loved also the camaraderie on the sets of everyone working, and to your point, like I love how everyone gives credit where credit is due, and talks about all of these teams, and I love that people have had interactions with literally every step.
Yeah,
So
it's
important.
lovely. Yeah, it is a lovely thing, and people are now more and more aware
Yeah.
of that sort of thing that goes on. I mean, I remember seeing that documentary that Billy D. Williams did back in, it would have been what, 83, would it?
Yeah.
From the Creature Shop, where he's talking to Tim Rose and all those guys. And that's why it's sort of lovely to see Tim, come back and do Akbar for those movies. And so there was that legacy connection. But I remember seeing that as a kid and just thinking, that's a cool job. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And then you just sort of think that somewhere there's somebody watching this today with their kids, and their kids are going, oh, you can do that for a gig, right? And so you can get online. And now, because it's there's so much stuff online, you can learn how to do it more, and you can film stuff, and you can make your own little films and put them up online really fast. And I think it's so good that there are new ways into the industry. So I encourage people, just keep making stuff, keep putting scars on your friends with, however make people making prosthetics and that kind of thing, because there's all these online tutorials. So it's never been, a better time, more accessible time to get involved in this stuff. I know we've got the lockdown and everything, but you can get stuff sent to you, and you can just take the time now to sort of go, oh, I'm interested in pursuing that or reading up about that. And with stuff like the Rebel Legion and the 501st and all of those guys with the costuming, and just, oh, I need a Kylo Ren scar. How do I make that? How can I do that? And you can get them, it's all there, and this is, I think this should be, I know this is a really tough situation, and if you can find something to distract yourself from it, and Star Wars is a big distraction to lots of people, and that's a great thing, and I'm really happy that I've been a part of that, and you realize how much joy it does bring to people. But I just keep reminding everybody that I was a Star Wars fan at 7 years old, and have continued to be, and I got really lucky and got to be in them, and you never know where your life's going to end up.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Thank you so much, Brian.
You're very welcome.
For joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
So wonderful, and hope to see you at a con soon.
Absolutely. I can't wait to get back to them, because I've missed everybody. So thanks ever so much for having me. Stay safe, everyone. Take care.
Thanks.